Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is 7 o'clock Central Standard Time. My name is Vern Fish. I'm the current president of the Friends of Wabakimi. We also have Dave McTeague on the webinar tonight. He's the board chair. So when we get all done, you can ask Dave all the political questions you want. My job is just to get the topic up and going. So with that, we're going to get started here. This is the next in our series of the Friends of Wabakimi, our webinar series, and it's Wabakimi Adventure, Planning from Scratch by Mary Blaisdell, actually known as MJ. Before we get into that, though, I want to just kind of bring you up to date on something that is coming up. Our annual meeting, which we're required to do as a by the province of Ontario, is scheduled for 9 a.m. on Sunday, March 13th. It's actually going to be at Kanuakopia, hopefully in the rendezvous room at the Clarion Hotel in Madison, Wisconsin. And if we can make it work, it's going to be both virtual and live. So there'll be more information coming out as we go, but we've had pretty good success doing virtual annual meetings the last couple of years. I think we can do both a live and virtual, but we'll see how that's going to go. So you might want to mark your calendar. If you're going to be at Kanuakopia, drop in on Sunday morning. And if not, you may be able to sit in your kitchen table and watch us do an annual meeting. So put that on your calendar. With that said, let me kind of bring you up here. We've had a series of webinars, and I'm kind of going through them so you can see some of them that have already been done. Evan McCall, who's the assistant park superintendent, was here on our last one. As I noted, Mary MJ will be doing the current one, but we also have some great presentations in the near future here. John Holmes, who actually got snowed out on the first night, has agreed to come back on the 23rd and talk about his solo trip. We also have Julie Bourne, who's the boreal manager for Ontario Nature, and she's going to talk about protecting areas. And the Friends of Wabakimi have a partnership with Ontario Nature, so I'm kind of excited about having her on the program. We also are very, very pleased to have Gary Racy, who is the expert on caribou, and he's going to be doing a presentation on that topic. So that is really going to be an important show. And then I'm going to end the series on the 27th of February. Retracing the voyage of Edward Umfraville. And the reason we're doing that is his route is hopefully going to be protected by some of the work that Julie Bourne is doing with Ontario Nature. So, but tonight we're actually talking about planning adventure to Wabakimi. MJ, she's right there in that very manly group. She is the one that kept us all in good shape. But let me show you a little bit more about MJ here. So let me see if I can pull this up. All right, there we go. She's on the board of directors, chairs the expedition committee. She's a retired school administrator, been on several Wabakimi trips. She's actually on the board of the Buchanan County Conservation Board in Independence, Iowa. Her topic is planning an adventure. And if you're not sure how to get started, well, MJ is going to walk us through it, how to pick a route, estimate time and travel, create the maps you need, find trip partners, plan for safety. But let me give you a little more about MJ here. Hang on to this.
Oh.
Okay, I just had to do that. But MJ's not afraid to take a chance, and she actually made a mistake of going paddling with some other members of the Friends of Wabakimi, and that was on the Big Fork River in northern Minnesota. So she got a taste of some whitewater. So MJ's not afraid to go out there and risk it all. So with that, I'm going to let MJ have the floor. So we're going to let you.
Can I go ahead and share the screen now?
Yep, as you should be able to do that.
Okay.
I'll keep adding people as they come in. And again, we are recording. I think you got it, MJ. It's all yours.
Okay, very good. Okay. Well, this presentation is about planning a trip for Wabakimi, which if you haven't been to Wabakimi before, once you get started, can seem a little bit of a daunting task. It's not quite as simple as other trips you might have planned before. We will dig right in. Maybe. Okay. Vern's already covered this. So my background, we'll dig right into, I'm going to be covering some basic information that you need to know about Wabakimi, some route planning, and time and maps needed and costs, how to find partners, some safety and communication information, gear to take. I will have links in this presentation put into a handout, and that handout will be available also when this gets posted. So you don't have to bother with trying to remember things. And if you tuned in last year, this will be a similar presentation. However, I've added a bunch of new things that I think are really going to be handy. I would encourage you to use that chat section of Zoom to either ask questions or comment as you go along, because if some of you are seasoned travelers, you might have some different ideas than I have for this. Why Wabakimi? I would have to say, first of all, just for me, at the point I decided, and I think it was about 2011, I can't remember, I was doing Boundary Waters trips mostly, and having a great time doing that. And I was at Canucopia, and I kept finding this Wabakimi project advertised, and I was looking into it. I wasn't sure if women ever chose to go on that kind of thing, but I looked into it with Phil Cotton and decided I wanted to give it a shot. Mostly because I thought it seemed like it would be, I would be able to get a more remote wilderness experience, but in the comfort of some safety with experienced people and at a reasonable cost for the experience. And besides that, the fishing was great and there were good people, and there was an additional challenge for me. So loved all of it, had a great time on 3 of those trips. I think I covered up Wabakimi in this map. It's right here underneath. I didn't even notice until I was reviewing it earlier. But the basics that you need to know about Wabakimi is that it's about 3.5 hours north of Thunder Bay, and it's very, very large, and it's about the same size of Quetico and Boundary Waters put together. It's about that, but it has quite a lot less. Wabakimi gets about 700 people a year, and Boundary Waters gets and Quetico combined get about 200,000 people a year. So quite a big difference. One of the things I wanted to point out, some things that I think are important to know, that if you haven't had this kind of a wilderness experience before, or you haven't been to Wabakimi, but you've been to the Boundary Waters or Quetico or something, it's different because it is more remote. So one of the first things I noticed was that portages were hard to find. The landings were hard to see. First of all, when we were going for the project, we were trying to recreate those portages, find and service them again to build them into something that was usable. Up here in the left-hand corner is an example of what you might find in a place that's well-traveled, like Boundary Waters. But in Wabakimi, you're lucky to find something, and this wasn't really a portage. I think we made it into one. This one is a portage. Vern or somebody, can you tell me, is my arrow showing up?
Yes, I can see your arrow.
All right, thank you. But to find the actual landing down here was a little bit of a trick. We knew it had to be around there because there was a drop off in the water over to the side. So we knew that this was probably going to be the portage, but you really didn't see it very well until you got, on there. So portages can be quite difficult to see. And then the actual condition of the portages can be quite difficult. This might be a typical of what you might see in the boundary waters. It's a clear path, right where you're going. It's well trodden by people. So, but in Wabakimi, if you're lucky, you'll see a path that goes through maybe where logs have been cut. Or as we found it, it might look more like an uncut area, and it takes a while to make our way through that. Accessing is a really big one. That's a difference to me, because if I was gonna go to the boundary waters or Quetico, I would drive my car, and I would get a permit to enter at that point on that day, and I would just drive up there, park my car in a parking lot, get my gear in my boat, and go. And it's not that easy in Wabakimi. There are very few places where you can just drive up, and parking lots would be quite scarce as well. So generally, there are 3 ways you can enter Wabakimi. You can fly in, you can take the train, or you can get shuttled by vehicle up to a closer point. If you get a chance to fly, I would recommend it. It's an awesome place. But I wanted to, on this map, I wanted to just indicate a couple of things. Here's one of the roads going up to Armstrong from Thunder Bay. And from there, there are smaller roads that you might be able to get shuttled into. This road comes up like from International Falls area and crosses by, Savant Lake and goes up to Pickle Lake. And then there are some roads that go in. But as I said, some of those are inaccessible because they belong to logging companies or First Nation, people, but they are not as accessible to those of us who don't live in the area. And you might find it worth a call to somebody to get a shuttle ride in there. The other thing, oh, there it is. The other thing is the train route goes through the lower portion here. And if I had to guess, I'd say that is probably a common way to go in. And there are stopping points all the way along the way, where you can get off, and they're close to some put-in points. Otherwise, you can fly in just about anywhere. So, and there are airports or places where you can get, not just airports, but places that have otters or planes that can take you in to the area. So 3 ways to get in there. Again, if I had anything to recommend, it would be plane, because you get to see so much more by the plane. I do have some outfitters listed here that you might be able to access if you wanted to look for a way to fly in. And otherwise by train, this is what it might look like. You can carry your gear, and they'll take your boat and your gear with you. And as long as you let them know in advance where you want to get off of the train, they will stop at that point. There is some information on how to access the rail online, and I have that link in the handout. These days, I would have to say that, at least when I looked into it, the rail information is a little less dependable, mostly because of COVID, the schedule has had to change. So these days, I would be sure to check specifically when the drop off and pick up times would be and days, because they don't go every day, and you do need to be aware of that. I guess I'm going backwards here, maybe because that's my own preference, I suppose. But by car, this is what a road might look like, and I don't think it really did it justice. This is a photo by Dave McTeague on one of his last visits, and he was being shuttled in, and the road was rather bumpy, and as he had a video of it. And and he was being shuttled in because there, wasn't a place to just park a car and whatever, but he was able to find someone to take him in. The next thing to think about, of course, is, well, where am I going to go? I mean, there's all kinds of lakes up there and rivers, and so where to start? One of the main places to start is trip reports, and we have those. I'm going to, in fact, throughout this presentation, I'm going to do some shameless plugs for our website and some of the resources that Friends of Wabikimi have. But we do have a great part of our website, a trip report page. And if you go on a trip and you want to post a report about this, we would really appreciate it, because the more information we can gather about any parts of the routes would be good to add to the base of reference for people who are planning on trips. Of course, word of mouth works as well. So you can talk to people, come to Canucopia and talk to people who have been up there, and they can tell you a little bit about where they've been and what might be a good place to start with you. And Friends of Wabikimi, our website, once again, there are people that you can contact there to ask those kinds of questions. There are lots of resources that you can go to, various maps and so forth that I'll tell you a little bit more detail in it, but you're going to want to know about those river systems and lakes, and where are the canoe routes and where's the height of land, because that will tell you which direction the river is going in. Where are those outpost cabins? Not that you're going to be using them necessarily, but sometimes they're handy for reference points. Of course, you want to know where the rapids and portages are, and where the campsites are, and those road and train entry points. So we've got resources that will help you with that. This is kind of a picture of what our trip report form looks like on the web. And I would recommend starting there. And you can, they are, written, some of them are written by the report form that the expedition committee developed to help people guide them in what kind of information we might be looking for, or what other travelers might be looking for. So you can get that trip report blank from that trip report form, and fill it out and send it in to us and add your own trip report. That would be great. And having photos of your trip would be great as well. Some other paddling forums that you can go to find trip reports are listed here, along with some paddling blogs that might give you some great ideas for starting. So that's where I would start first, is looking at trip reports. And if you've a mind to, here's one of my shameless plugs. On another one of our pages, the Friends of Wabikimi is encouraging people to consider doing self-guided reconnaissance expeditions. And we have some routes that we're recommending that people, think about doing a self-guided trip on, because those are areas that need some probably some updates, but also certainly we need to know what their conditions are so that we can report to other people. So if you need an idea, consider this. The expedition committee has listed some routes. They're in the, I cannot pronounce that. I'm gonna nickname it the Wabnu Forest. We've known it as the Armstrong Forest before this. And it's basically kind of the northern area around Armstrong. And there are, planned forest harvest over that area. And if we have people going through that area, that can show that there is recreational interest in the area, so that to help preserve the area and the habitat. Here's the list of routes if you want to consider those. These are also listed on our website, so look for them. And we really hope that people will consider this. There are a few of us that are going to try something in this area in the spring that sounds pretty exciting. The next thing I would do is get a planning map. This is something, another shameless plug, the Friends of Wabakimi sells on their website. And it's an excellent map that contains some really good information. Good picture of the park itself here. You can't see it real well, but here's the train going through there. So you can have some information about the railroad. There are some roads going up in there. There's not a lot of roads in general anyway, but some of those are listed on there. And there are a couple of paved things around the general area, but the closer you get, it's not paved. Somewhere in here, I think it's up here someplace, is the height of land. There's a jagged line that goes through that shows you, no, I think it's over here, that shows you where the land kind of divides and the water runs a different direction. And that would be an important thing to know, especially if you have to cross that. And then another important thing that's on this particular map that I didn't find anywhere else, and you can't see it here, you will see it on a later slide, is there are grid lines throughout this, yellow grid lines that are really topo map reference lines, which can get you another set of maps. It's a reference to get you another set of maps that can help you with far more detail to the area that you're looking at. This is another map. This is put out by Ontario Parks, and I guess I put a warning here. This is for any map that you get. Not everything is current on the maps. One of the things that I think is a challenge for going to Wabakimi is that you have to access so many different resources unless you have a really good set of maps that can guide you for your entire route. It's probably wise to seek out multiple sources to compare so that you have multiple things to look at on your trip. This Ontario Parks map has a few additional things that can be helpful. Not only are the routes marked on there like our planning map, they also have the portages listed, and I think these are the meters long that they are. There's campsites marked on the map, and I think it's probably hidden, but somewhere over here, no, there's one right there. That's an outpost cabin. And then here's the rail line with the number of, I don't know, it's probably kilometers from Armstrong, where some of those drop-off points are. So that can be really handy. In addition to that, another plug, on our website, we sell some maps that were developed through the Wabakimi project. This project was about 15 years, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood long. And the goal was to create more detailed maps of the various routes, and they were trying to find the routes that were used by the fur traders of long ago, and then to upgrade the actual route through so that people could make it through better. But that's been over time, and so not sure what all the conditions of the routes are at this time. But these maps can give you a very detailed look at those routes with some of the, you can't really see it, but over here it got cut off. These are magnified so that you can see it even more close up, which is really handy. And they're divided into 5 areas. So the whole park is divided into 5 areas, and these 5 books will cover those areas. So you can, they're a great resource to use. We also have the Wabikimi Guidebook. And this is a great resource that was just added this last year. It's developed by Lawrence Mills, and it contains a lot of route information, but it also has some planning information in it. I don't know, this is actually a little video, but I don't know what kind of a hassle that will be. If I hold this up, can you see it? Because I don't know if my picture is showing.
Yeah, just hold it still.
Okay, I will do that. I'm gonna open this up so maybe I can, no, okay. I can't see it yet, but. All right, so is it in a good place?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so in here, there is a good map of the overall area and some good information on what to expect, some general things about Wabakimi, and as well as some information about beginning to prepare your trip, including some information about how to access it, including he's got listed some of the stopping points for the train, which would be a really handy reference. Most of the book contains trip reports, including some detailed maps within it. And then he's got a list of resources in the back as well. That might be a real handy thing to have. That was a really quick review. I hope you got to see what was in that. I would recommend buying this guidebook. Good resource, good idea for starting to look at trips. Okay, I talked about Topo Maps earlier with our planning map. I wanted to show you what that looks like. This is a little chunk out of our planning map where the topo references are. This is on land and this is in the water, but you can see the yellow grid, and then there's some numbers, and those numbers correspond to a series of maps that are on this CD of by Yellow Maps. Each of those maps looks something like this. And although you can't see the detail here, there is a great deal of detail in those maps, and they would be quite helpful in helping you to put together your route. I know that I spoke at length with Vern last year to get some ideas on how to put all that together and how to use the Topo Maps. And he showed me how to just copy and paste it into a document along with other maps that you get from other resources, and carry that with you so that you have what you need on the water. But some of the additional information you'll get here is it will actually kind of outline for you a little bit where the rock gardens are, the marshes and swamps and so forth, and the rapids. So some additional information that can be quite handy. This is an example of what Vern taught me how to do. He took some information that he got out of trip reports, and this looks like information that he got out of the volumes that we sold from the Wabikimi project, and this is a topo map, and put it all into one document for the area that he was going into. This is, it's Grayson Lake. I'm not even sure if that's in Wabakimi or not, but it was.
Yes, it is. It's right up from Whitewater Lake.
Okay.
On the way to the Moncrief water system.
Thank you. Okay, and then he made his own marks on here to indicate things he wanted to remember for being on the water. So that would be a really handy reference, especially if you wanted to go in an area that had not been traveled well and wasn't as documented as you would like in order to feel comfortable. So some really good methods there. One of the other things that you have to do is get permits. And this would depend on where you're going to go, if you're going to be in the park or in the Crown Land area around the park. Two different permit systems. So here are some links for getting a permit through the Wabakimi Park System, and that's what this is a picture of. You can either call the number or you can actually reserve online for that. And then the Crown Lands also has a reservation method for getting a permit. Trip planning and distance. I'm afraid I use the old as dirt method, and that is basically I use a string and mark the routes that I'm going to be taking in order to, and compare that to the scale of miles, because I'm old school and I haven't figured out something as great as Paddle Planner. I've taken a look at Paddle Planner, and it looks like it would be an excellent resource. And if you are handy with technology, that is the place to go. I'm told that it would do a really good job of determining the distance, both on the water and portaging that you would have to do. And from that, you might be able to determine how many days it would take. For me to determine how many days it would take, I look at former trips that I've taken that I was comfortable with, and determine from there if I can cover this amount of distance based on, you know, my comfort level for that trip in a trip past, then that's how far I will go for this one. A lot of books, guidebooks and so forth will tell you, well, this trip will take so many days. And I personally can't trust that, because that might be a number of days by someone who is interested in really going hard and fast. And I don't move that fast. So you really have to make your own judgment call on that, but you can do this the old fashioned way too. Another one that can't remember, but recently I came across this one that was recommended. I think it was in an email that somebody sent. That is another place like Paddle Planner that you can get that kind of information as well. Finding a trip paddling partner can be a difficult thing to do, because you know you're taking this trip that basically, I mean, there's a lot of risk involved, and so you need to be with people that you can, you know, have a similar mindset as you. But one thing to do is to look for places where you might find trip paddling partners. Go to conference events like Canoecopia or other local events of a paddling nature in your area. Come up to, here's another plug, the Wabikini Rendezvous, September 8th through 11th is going to be held up in Thunder Bay and Armstrong. And that would be an excellent place to network and get to know other paddlers who have an interest in going to Wabikimi. So that would be a great tool. You might be able to meet people online through many different groups, including the Friends of Wabikimi or other paddling organizations, or local paddling clubs that you might belong to might be a good resource for that. Or just people you know and drag along. That would be my sister-in-law. Actually, she called me up one day and said, "Will you take me to Boundary Waters?" And I was shocked and excited, because I knew that she was a person who would share some of my ideas about traveling in that way and into the wilderness. And I knew that should be a great fun too. So, you know, just look for people that you know as well. Also, look for possible small gatherings through Friends of Wabikimi in the future. We're in the process of trying to get some gatherings going, and we'll see how that goes and comes along, and we'll announce them if they're going to be happening. But some other things that you might want to think about is whether or not you have some common goals for the trip. You know, if people want to spend a lot of time fishing versus spend a lot of time moving and getting someplace new, you know, that's two different things, and they sometimes don't go together well. And there is, like I said, you're taking a risk. There's some possible adverse conditions. You know, if they're someone who doesn't like getting cold and wet, they probably might have difficulty on a trip like this. So need to be aware of those things. Are they people who are willing to share the load, the work, or are you going to be essentially a guide doing it all? Are they interested in fishing, photography, or other things? How far do they want to paddle, and how much in a day? Do they want to do white water versus flat water? Those kinds of things. And then, of course, just things to know about your traveling partners, like you know, their level of safety concern, any training that they've taken, and if they have any health concerns that you need to know about. Please, if you have some additional ideas on what you should know about your traveling partners, put that in the chat section, because I certainly haven't listed everything here. Organizing the trip. We, in the Friends of Wabikimi, someone brought it to our attention that the Wilderness Canoe Association, and it costs about $35 to join that, is a good place that has methods of organizing it that are useful. These are some of the things that you can find there. They've got ways to organize yourself with a checklist, some guidelines for organizers, and a trip planning spreadsheet that that you can use in order to keep everyone informed of all the arrangements, and keeping the participants' information that needs to be known, and what the travel plans are on a daily basis as best as you can, what the menu is and the itinerary, how many tents and canoes you have, and any questions that have to be answered from the group, and who has what tasks to do. Those are all good things to include in an organization if you're of a trip, if you're planning for more than yourself. I've also done a little bit of estimating costs when I've put together trips before, and this should be taken with a great big handful of salt, because it was very beginning, a starting point for searching for costs. But you need to take several things into account, whether or not you have a boat that will work, a canoe that will work for you. And for me, I don't have a boat that I would take up there. So I would need to rent. So that would be an additional cost. Lodging before and after, if you're staying in a hotel or an outfitters, or you're tenting or whatever, need to keep that in mind. The cost of the permit, whether or not you're going to fly in or do the rail drop off, or a shuttle, with somebody, how much the food and fuel will cost, and if you're printing up maps or buying maps, and just estimating those kinds of costs, and gas, of course, to and from. So this is kind of my way of doing it, but I find that the people always want to know, how much is it going to cost me? So getting into some communication for safety, there's a lot of items to consider for safety purposes. One is since you're out in no man's land, and it's very difficult to, you aren't going to get a phone signal or anything. So you need another device. Two of them that you could consider are the Spot device or the Garmin InReach Explorer. I have not personally used the Spot device before, but it does, I think it gives you some basic information, like where you're located and that you're okay. And then I think it has the ability to send an SOS signal. The Garmin, depending on which model you either purchase or rent, has a lot of features that I really appreciated when I used the upper end one, and it even has some information about weather on it. It was it was excellent for that. And it has a lot more detailed GPS information on it. And you can send scripted or even individualized messages to people from the device. So that's a really handy thing to have. I do have, when I don't personally have one, I'm hoping to purchase one this year. And, but I did rent it from this place here, Outdoor Equipment Rentals. And I thought it was a pretty good deal. Another idea is using a satellite phone. And this, if you want to purchase one, it's going to be pretty costly, but rental is a little bit more reasonable. And there's a place where you can rent it from. And what's nice about these, I mean, they are large and bulky to carry and so forth, but what's nice about them is that you have voice-to-voice, contact, so you can actually have a conversation and let them know how you're doing and what's going on. Some training you might want to consider. This is something I'm considering this year, or not considering, I've signed up for it. I'm going to be taking the Wilderness First Aid course through NOLS, 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 Wilderness First Aid. They have some other courses too that they offer, and that would be really helpful, but I thought I'd start here. This is, for me, it's offered all over the place, all over the country, and I don't, I didn't even notice whether there were places outside of the US for training listed. Didn't notice that at all. I'm sorry for those of you from Canada.
You can do it in Helsinki or South Africa if you want, MJ.
Oh, well, that's nice to know. Okay, I found one in Madison. So, and you can see the price here is a big range. I found one for like $250, and it was 2 days, 2 full 8-hour days. So I'm looking forward to getting myself trained in that. Fire information. If Wabakimi is a place that has been lucky enough not to have as many fires, but it's not that it doesn't happen there. And if you want to know what's going on, here are 2 resources you can get to find out what is going on or what the current situation is with forest fires. And that's certainly something you'd want to know. Insurance, if you wanted to make sure that you had the ability to be, medevaced out, then you might want to consider purchasing insurance. When I happened to be on that Wilderness Canoe Association site, they offer insurance for members. I don't know what it costs, and I don't know what that involves, but I just noticed that it had it. Otherwise, a recent traveler, Jason Long, let us know that in 2018, he was able to purchase insurance for himself and one other for 10 days at $340 using Swiss Global Insurance and its medevac insurance, which was good to know. So that's something to definitely consider. Some specific equipment for safety. You need to know that the first 4 things listed up here with asterisks by them are required by Canada. So you do have to have a PFD, and I imagine you're required to wear it. I don't know. You need to have a whistle and some kind of a baler or bilge pump, and a heavy heaving line, 15 feet of it, 15 meters of it rather. Along with that, some other things to consider is having extra dry clothes with you on your person and not something that you go digging for. So like in a day pack, and wrapped several times, probably in sealed bags, so that it for sure stays dry, or it has a better likelihood of staying dry even if you capsize. The waterproof packs are pretty important because if your sleeping bag gets wet, or the clothes that you would change into are wet, you probably have a problem. So those waterproof packs are pretty important. A food barrel. Personally, I carry a food barrel. I like them because they kind of seal in most of the smells. There's those, the waterproof, or excuse me, the food barrels are the big blue ones with the rim that seals. And I like those to put food in because of the sealing of the smells, but also because I know that's gonna, keep things dry. But not everybody likes the food barrels. They're not always all that easy to carry. I do have a harness and I like that, but that's kind of a personal preference thing. The first aid kit of some kind, and making sure that you get your trip plan to other people, maybe even including things like the color of your tents or canoes, or where is your car, or that kind of thing. A spare paddle in case one gets broken or lost. Your maps, of course. Some tracking lines for the front and the back of the bow and the stern of the canoe, so that you can guide a loaded canoe through a stream or a set of small, swifts that you can't actually float through. That would be a handy thing to have. Rain gear, windbreaker, hats and gloves, all of those things. Something I hadn't considered until last year was a pin kit. A pin kit, it consists of a rope and pulley system for rescuing a pinned canoe. And if you were doing whitewater especially, and you capsized and the boat got pinned, up against a rock or tree or whatever, it's going to be almost impossible to get it loose from there unless you had something like a pin kit. Other tools you might consider that might come in handy for safety are a folding saw. You can't see mine, it's in this little case here, or a folding bow saw that can help you saw through larger, logs. I do usually bring a hatchet along, to a lightweight hatchet, which can help with splitting logs. The rest of the gear, I kind of put in categories, and that links handout that I have that will go up will include my list that looks like this on the very end of it. And I kind of put them in categories of things that I need to pack: safety gear, paddling gear, camping and shelter gear, camp and kitchen gear and food, the water systems and fire starting gear, clothing and personal items, first aid tools, things to do. I always have things to do before the trip, like lock the doors and that kind of thing. So anyway, that will be a handout that you can have. I put this picture in here. This is Barry, if people don't recognize him. He's got, I don't know, I'm guessing about 100 flies on the back of him there. So making sure that you have things to deal with the bugs as well would be a part of that gear. Basically though, Wabakimi is a beautiful place, and I would recommend going there any day. And another plug for becoming familiar with our website, and you will be able to access this webinar when it gets posted, along with the handout that was available. So that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, MJ. Now the fun part, we can either continue to ask questions via chat, and you guys have done a very good job of bouncing back and forth, or we can try and take voice conversations, although we tend to talk over the top of each other. So however you want to approach it, if you got a question, maybe raise your hand or put it on chat and we'll read it out loud.
We had a question earlier about the safety of cars parked at put-in points.
Do you have an answer, Dave?
Well, I haven't actually heard of any car clouding or problems, but I know that most people opt for some kind of safe parking at an outfitter or someplace like that that's close by. But if there have been car clouding or problems with vandalism, I think we'd want to know about it so we could pass that along. But we haven't heard of any recently.
Is Bruce Heyer still out there? I think Bruce Bruce pretty knows the area pretty well. He may want to add to that.
Hi, Vern.
Yes.
Yes. Here's the problem. We have some youth in the area that have discovered that canoeists leave money and stuff in their cars. And so there have been a fair number actually of vandalisms at certain spots. So we have inexpensive car parking for people, but other outfitters do too. And I think for most people, whether they use your car or the outfitter's truck, a shuttle is a good idea for most people.
Agreed.
Just one more comment about the train. The train can be kind of fun and it's cost effective to be sure. The problem is Via Rail has declined in number of trips. And so now it's down to just Mondays and Thursdays in each direction. Sometimes it's on time to the minute. And sometimes it's 4, 6, 8, 10 hours late. So if you have a 14-day trip and can afford to lose a day sitting in Armstrong waiting for the train, fine. But if you have a 5, 6, 7 day trip and you don't really want to lose a day, you might want to think about that, or at least have a backup plan, an alternate route, or the ability to switch to a fly-in if the train is half a day or a day late.
Yeah, this is Don.
Go.
I've got a comment on, I know Matisse Lake for fly-ins and fly-outs. He prefers an inReach so you can be texted rather than the sat phones. It just seems to work better for him.
This is Bruce. We love inReaches, and we have a lot of them, and we rent them, and we monitor them as well. And I ask my clients to every night around the campsite to say, I'm alive and well, and here's where I am, just in case. And we also rent satellite phones for people who prefer that. And inReaches are super, they really are. There's a little learning curve, but it's not that bad. And you can communicate in both directions. So if you have somebody that you're communicating with, and they need to get a message to you, or you need to change your plans. We have a fair number of people who want to subtract a day from their trip, add a day to their trip, or don't make it to the pickup spot for airplane. And so it really helps. And so it used to be optional for our service, but now I'm making it mandatory that people either own an inReach, borrow an inReach, or rent an inReach, and communicate with us if they want to be our client. And it has made everybody's life better, including ours. I enjoy flying my float plane, but a few years ago, I got pretty sick of having to do a half a dozen search and rescues for people that weren't at the right place at the right time. So now the inReach has pretty much eliminated that problem, and we know where they are. And of course, there's always a chance you can get sick or hurt yourself.
Bruce, since you're on the line, one of the questions was, what's a shuttle service to an entry and exit point? Do you want to kind of generalize that?
You mean cost-wise?
Yes.
Well, it's simple. The really long runs on bad roads are more, and really short run to Armstrong or Little Caribou Lake is not much at all, and everything in between. But we have a list, and if people send me an email, I can tell you how much it is. But it's if you're going to, there are a couple that are like an hour and a half one way on pretty bad roads, bumpy, bad roads. And our trucks every year or two need a front end, and we have to build that into the cost, plus the staff time for being gone 3 to 3.5 hours on a couple of the sites. So it's reasonable, but it's not nothing.
Bruce, would you recommend parking at the Armstrong train station?
Usually, but there has been occasional vandalism there too. Armstrong has a problem with poverty, addictions, and alcoholism and anger. So probably okay, but not 100% okay.
Okay, thanks.
I saw a couple of questions on there. I haven't gotten through the whole list yet, but can anyone address when the bug season starts and ends and all that?
Bruce should,
Go ahead, Bruce.
yeah, Bruce should start. Wabikimi, the good news is when the bugs are done in Wabikimi, they're done, and there isn't much of a second or third hatch. So last 2 weeks in May are bug-free. And from second week in July till the rest of the season are not bad at all. Some deer and moose flies late in the summer. But if it's going to be a buggier year, it's June. Now, I don't mind bugs. And June is bug breeding and feeding season for wildlife. And so you see a lot more wildlife in June, and the fishing is always good in Wabakimi, but it's particularly spectacular in June. So if bugs don't bother you much, I think June's great. But if bugs bother you, don't probably not come in June. A really couple of neat windows of opportunity are after Labor Day, because there are not very many people in Wabakimi anyway. You're more likely to see a caribou than a human in most parts of Wabakimi. But after Labor Day, it really is low numbers. And the last 2 weeks in May, the water's high, the fishing's good, it's before the bugs, and the days are usually very warm and pleasant. There is a downside, and that is a swim. The last 2 weeks in May is about a 5-second experience. So swimming is not happening at the end of, in May. The ice usually goes out by about May 10, and the fishing season starts about a week later than that. But I really like that time of year. And even accidental swamping or stepping out at portages up to your knees can be a little brisk in May. But I like the end of May and all of June myself.
Bruce, another question that I saw was someone wanted to know, how do you tell on the maps which access roads are accessible by us?
Well,
They thought it was unclear on the maps.
yeah, so I have different answers depending on whether you're a do-it-yourself or using FOW resources, etc., or mine. What I do with every single client, in addition to emails and sending rate sheets and stuff, is I insist on at least one phone chat with every prospective or actual client, because I find back and forth by email 8 times still doesn't cover all the bases. And people have questions of me, but I also have questions of them. And so I try to have a panoply of trips that are inexpensive and easy. So I'm asking them what their experience is, their age, their health, what they like, what they don't like. But I'm also right up front asking them what their budget is. There's no sense telling them about fly-in, fly-out trips if their budget's a couple $100. So those trips do exist. There are a few, as you identified, there really aren't very many road access points. There are more rail access points. A little while ago, though, I did add up all the access points combining rail or road, and I was surprised to count 21 of them. So I myself was surprised at the number. If I'd been guessing, it probably would have been half of that. But when I really took a close look at it, there actually are quite a few access points at various parts of the park, or close to the park. As you know, you can't drive up to the park anywhere, but you can drive up a half a day's paddle away from the park or a full day's paddle away from the park and paddle across Crown Land. And there's a lot of Crown Land around Wabikimi that's just as wild as Wabikimi, it's just not in the park. Ontario residents can just paddle across Crown Land. Non-residents of Ontario need a Crown Land camping permit, which is $10 per person per day. And but interestingly, if they're the client of a licensed tourist operator, there's no fee for Crown Land permits on Crown Land. So that saves a little bit of money or amortizes a little bit of the cost of using an outfitter. But not everybody knows that for the Crown Land part of your trip, if you're from the US or Germany or England, you do need Crown land permits, or you need a letter from a licensed tourist operator explaining why you're exempt. Did that answer your question, Mary Jean?
Yep.
Okay.
Someone else asked about poison ivy and ticks. They want to know if there's any poison ivy or ticks in Wabakimi. I can't say that I've noticed either one.
There's virtually no ticks in Wabikimi. Thunder Bay has quite a few now, and it has Lyme disease, but it hasn't crept up to Wabikimi yet. And a large part of that is because there are no deer in Wabikimi. Well, there's members of the deer family called moose and caribou, but there's no white-tailed deer in Wabikimi, and they tend to harbor ticks. And what was the other half of your? Oh, poison ivy. There is a little patch of poison ivy on the Allen Water River on one of the portages about halfway down to Wabakimi Lake. Odd, but it's there. And there's also one at Snake Falls on the Albany River. But those are the only two places in Wabakimi that I'm aware of that have a tiny patch of poison ivy.
Well, we stand at the hour. MJ has given us lots to talk about for over an hour, which is outstanding. And you did set a record again, MJ, for this season. You got up to 51, so that's the best webinar yet this year. Yeah, a tough competition. I guess at this point, I'm going. If you want to hang around and chat with each other, I will leave the mic on for a little bit longer. But unless there's a specific question that somebody's just dying to ask, I think we'll let MJ go if she wants to leave. But if anybody has a specific question, I'll give you a couple more seconds to ask, and then we'll kind of let it slowly fade away. So another comment or question? And if I don't get one, I'll turn it, let Dave McTeague loose. And I know he's got all kinds of promotional things he wants to hit the airs with. So Dave McTeague, do you have any final thoughts you want to share with us?
Well, I just want to thank MJ for her presentation again. And we're good. We have some more webinars coming up. Please join Friends of Wabakimi. If you're not yet a member, we'd like to keep track. I know some of the folks tonight might have joined us via our Facebook page and our outreach to Ontario canoe tripping groups. So please stay in touch with us. We need you and we need volunteers. We're an all volunteer organization. We don't have any staff. We're very conservation oriented. We work close with Bruce Heyer and other people on our current comments that we're making on the Wabadogang New Pink Forest planning process. This is a really, really important effort to kind of preserve the canoe routes and the habitat in this area that's nestled up against Wabakimi Provincial Park.
And join if you're not a member. Please join if you're not a
Please join
member.
us. We're growing as an organization. I mean, we've doubled our membership in the last year. And we're becoming a stronger voice. And this area needs protection. There are the Crown land forest units around the park. We need to have a stronger conservation voice. There's like 5 forests, and then there's the area north of the park. We call it the Mizikau Valley, that's bordered by the Caribou Forest, Albany River Provincial Park, and Wabakimi Provincial Park. We think that area needs more protection, and I'm sure there's other areas that need protection, and we're trying to get a start on broadening the protections for the areas around Wabakimi Provincial Park, because the experts are telling us that the caribou need more reach and more protection than just what's offered by the park itself.
And Julie Bourne with Ontario Nature is going to be talking about how they are trying to protect some of those areas on January 30th. So that's at the end of the month. So that one's going to be a good one to sort of have that discussion. And plus we have Gary Racy, who's going to be talking about woodland caribou on February 13th. So both those topics are coming up as we go forward. And if your canoeing is more than just getting your paddle wet and you want to protect the resource that you're enjoying, you need to come and participate in those 2 webinars, because they'll give you a better sense of how to protect the resource that you're seeing as you paddle. Come see us at Canoecopia. We'll be doing presentations at Canoecopia in addition to having our lobby display set up. And we certainly need help. If you want to help work that display, we're always looking for volunteers to help work the lobby at Canoecopia on March 10, 11, 13, or 12, 13, 11, 12, 13. I'll get it out yet of March in Madison, Wisconsin. So, we could play some more MJ running whitewater videos. I've got more.
But you know what? I was going to ask, I have been able to save the chats before, but I can't find that function now. And I don't know if are we still recording?
Yeah, we're still recording.
I don't know if that's the reason or what.
Vern can save those.
Okay,
Well,
because
sure.
there were questions in there that I thought, oh, that's good to know that they're asking those questions. So if you would save it for me, and I don't know where it gets saved to. Actually, it said that I was saving it, but I don't know where it went. So.
Yeah, and we have another question is, are there busier areas of Wabakimi? The old saying was, if you meet somebody in a canoe, shake their hands, because you may never do it again. There aren't very many busy areas. You may meet somebody in a V-bottom boat off a lodge. It's pretty rare to run into another paddler. So it just is not an area with heavy use, no matter where you are. And even on those lakes that have lodges, they're not always occupied. And depending on what time you go through, you may go right by and never see anybody at one of those cabins. So if you see somebody in a boat, in a canoe, you need to stop and shake their hand, because that's a pretty rare occurrence. When you only got 300 to 400 people a year going into an area the size of Vermont, it's pretty rare to run into somebody. The question is who to contact. If you're staffing the booth, send it to vernfish@aol.com. Vernfish, all one word, @aol.com. I'm putting together a roster of people to help work the booth, certainly, and share that information with your friends and family. And we'll try and get you onto some sort of a spreadsheet and coordinate your efforts. I'm going to say goodnight unless there's somebody else that needs to bring a question in.
Good job, you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, don't forget, we're still going. We got more of them. January 23rd, John Holmes, Palisade, Grayson, and Caribou River solo. And John's probably done more trips than almost anybody that I know of. He's up in the 30 range, so he knows the area like the back of his hand. He's got a lot of information to share on the 23rd of January. And I believe Dave has the webinars posted on our website. If you didn't catch all that information as I blurted it out, we do have it where you can find it. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to everybody, and we'll see you in the near future on a future webinar.
Okay, stop record.
Yeah, stop record. Yeah, there you go.
Hey, Vern, would anybody